Today I have a special video for you guys. As some of you may know, I built this 8x10 foot aero shed back in 2014. It was great for a couple years, but my collection has gotten way too big. So back in 2019, I got this enclosed trailer to supplement my growing collection. However, despite this, I found working in the trailer to be really cramped and not a good solution for my issue. Another thing I hate about this 2-storage setup is going from the trailer to the shed all the time was a big pain in the butt. And the aero shed was really starting to rust and even leak, so I knew I had no choice but to replace it. Because I had to replace the shed anyway, my idea is to tear down the shed completely, sell the trailer, and build one big 10x20 shed to be the new HeroRR workshop. I want a place where I can put a lot of my tools and some of my bikes in the same place, a spot that's comfortable and has plenty of room for my projects and for me to work on them. So that's what I did. Now at first when I decided to build this back in April of 2024, I had no intentions of making a video out of this. So I don't have a ton of videos showing the progress of this. But this project turned out way better than I could have ever imagined, and because of that I decided, why not try to make a video of it anyway, because I do have a ton of pictures and I do have a few videos. So I'm going to narrate over most of the pictures and videos I took and hopefully do the best job I can at telling this story. And one last thing I want to say, none of this would have been possible without the help of my father. He is one of the hardest working people I know, and he built a lot of structures in his life. His expertise and determination was so clutch during this build. I am very lucky that I had him helping me with this project, and by help I mean he did most of the work, probably about 90%. But I did fund the project, and I'll break down the cost at the end of this video. Anyway, let's get started. Now, I wanted to build this shed in a relatively budget-friendly way, so we decided to do a cinder block foundation instead of actually pouring a real foundation. Not the best way of doing it, I know, but it is the cheapest and most efficient way for me to get this project started, and that's good enough for me. Here is the 10x20 platform. It's all built up and the framing went so quick. It's always amazing to me how fast framing goes up. It just makes it feel like the project will be done in a week, but spoiler alert, it wasn't done in a week. The walls are 8 feet high and we started putting the siding on. We used T111 because it was the cheapest, but still looks pretty good. We have some of the windows framed out. I went with a double style on the one wall, and on the front we have 2 windows flanking the double barn doors. This should allow for plenty of natural light into the shed. Keeping with the cost-saving design, I opted for a skillion style roof. We went up about 2 feet in the front. Now there were a couple of benefits to this style of roof that I wanted. In addition to the cost benefits, it's also a lot easier to build, and I wanted to use solar panels, and I felt that this would make it a lot easier to install the panels since there wouldn't be some crazy pitch I would have to contend with. Although, to be fair, my pitch is facing the wrong direction for solar optimization, but I'll get to that a little bit later in this video. I also went with this design because of these 2 windows above the door. I love the way they look and they let in even more natural light, which is something I want to utilize as much as possible since I'll be filming a lot of videos in this shed. The roofing went really quick. I helped put up the tar paper and flashing, but my father shingled the entire thing while I was at work the next day, so I didn't get a good picture of it done. But I do have this photo, and as you can see, we have really expensive ASAC trim that we put up, which I know is not in the theme of this build, trying to be kind of cheap, but it looks so nice and it will last a very long time, and I think it'll be cheaper in the long run, even though this stuff was so expensive. Here we have some of the windows going up and some of the pictures of the inside. This is really starting to feel like a shed now. And now to the outside, we painted the whole outside of the shed this yellow color to match the house and garage. I really like the way this yellow looks, especially with the white trim and these windows. Here you can see we have the soffit installed now. It really gives a nice complete look to the shed. And here's the doors going up. Again, these are the double styled barn doors. I decided to go with these for a couple reasons. One, again, the cost is really cheap on these, but also I can open both up to have a large openings to bring any large items into the shed, or I can open up one side if I'm just walking in the shed with no other items as well. This shed will be used for my motorcycle, and having these double doors being able to open and put a ramp up will be really beneficial to loading and unloading bikes into the shed. Also, I'm sure you noticed the whole front is trimmed out now. I did end up using cheaper wood trim for the door and windows. I'm trying to kind of keep under budget as best as I can. I think it still looks nice and it should still last 10 years or so. Now to the inside. In order to maximize space, I wanted to install a couple lofts into the shed for extra storage. We built up on one side with a 4 foot by 10 foot loft. I debated on going 6 feet to make even more space, but ultimately I didn't want the space to feel cramped inside the shed, so I decided to keep the lofts at 4 feet wide instead. Also, here's a view of the inside of that door and also just how much natural light this shed has. It looks so good inside here. I cannot wait for this to be finished. Because I want this shed to be a usable workshop, I need it as comfortable as possible. I decided to insulate the entire thing, starting with the insulation baffles for the roof. These will allow the roof to breathe and stay cool on these hot summer days by allowing a channel of air to circulate through the soffits. After that, we busted out the insulation rolls and started putting them up, then followed by the pieces of strapping so we can put up our ceiling. This picture you see here served as a piece of inspiration for my shed. I like the white ceiling with the light wood walls. I feel like this made the space feel large and light, which is the theme that I am going for. These colors should also be augmented well by all the natural light I'm getting from the windows. We painted up some of these T111 boards outside and then started hanging them onto the ceiling. At first it looks a little odd, but after filling all the nail holes and giving the whole thing a couple more coats, it started to look much more uniform and nicer. Now with the ceiling up, it is time to do the walls. I can't believe I don't have a photo of the insulation in the walls, but trust me, it is there. We then hung up the T111 on the sides, and I spent the day staining the whole thing. I know some of the boards are darker than the others, but it will look better when it's finished, and it's a lot less noticeable in person. With all this work done, it made a lot of sense to put up the trim. Although it doesn't look like much, these little thin pieces of trim were really expensive. Predictably, we did have to remove the loft, but it will be going back up soon. I guess it was just a nice trial run anyway. And here it is back up and installed. It's definitely darker in there, and I'm really happy I decided to keep it at 4 feet. And now is as good a time as any to build the second loft. Oh, and here are the outside doors painted, since I don't think I showed that before. For the flooring, I decided to go with this outdoor carpet in this blue color. I went with the carpet because I wanted the shed to look a little bit like a showroom on one side, but still wanted to feel like a comfortable workshop in the other. I like the blue color, and best of all, it was cheap, less than $200 cheap. Essentially, this shed is completely finished, but I still have a checklist I need to complete, starting with a bench. I need a place where I can sit and work on stuff, and this 8-foot long bench is perfect. We custom made this bench to utilize my DIY solar system. I'll quickly explain what I did. Here's a diagram of my setup. I designed a 24-volt system which utilizes a 100 amp hour LiFePO4 battery connected to a 2000 watt pure sine wave inverter. In order to charge this setup, I will have a couple solar panels connected to a breaker for easy cutoff and a 50 amp Victron controller. Connecting everything together will be a couple bus bars with a 100 amp fuse on the inverter and a 125 class T fuse for the battery. I'll also have a kill switch after the class T fuse. Some might ask why I went with a 125 amp class T fuse on the battery but then a 100 amp on the inverter, and the reason why is because the class T fuse was really expensive and I want the 100 amp fuse to pop before the class T. 125 amps is enough to protect the wiring and the battery, as I used 1/0 gauge wire between the battery and inverter and 6 gauge wire to the controller. I oversized all my wires and I decided to ditch the 50 amp breaker between the controller and the bus bar because I felt that it was a little too redundant and unneeded. The controller, inverter, and battery are all connected to an underground 8-foot grounding rod, and I will have a battery shunt to help monitor the status of the battery. I originally planned to have a 12-volt fuse panel attached to my setup, but I decided for now just to run everything off of the inverter. I have an extra spot on both my bus bars should I decide to add this in the future. I custom made all my cables and crimped all my own lugs and heat shrunk all the ends. I then mounted it to a piece of plywood in a way that made most sense and then mounted it onto my bench. I drilled a hole through the top of my bench so the inverter could stick out the top to give me easy access to the connections. After about 6 coats of polyurethane on the top of the bench, it had a glass smooth finish. I did eventually swap out the legs for 4x4s and add a shelf as you can see here. At this point I had everything except for one thing, the solar panels. I went on Facebook Marketplace and found these massive 550 watt solar panels for $450 together. Funny story, they barely fit in my car and I had to drive home with the solar panel headrests instead of my original headrests. Luckily, it was only a 2-hour drive home. There's a few different ways to install solar panels onto a roof. I decided to go with the Iron Ridge system. Luckily, they had a warehouse an hour from my house. Mounting them was a lot easier than I thought it would be. It was as simple as installing these pieces of flashing and then mounting the rails and putting the solar panels on top of them. I think it took us less than 2 hours, and it was our very first time doing something like this, and we went way slower than we needed to. Honestly, if I had to do this again, I bet you I could do it in 30 minutes. Also, don't worry about these wires. Later I wrapped them in a conduit to prevent chafing. And here's an example of some of the power I was pulling from these two panels. They are facing away from direct sunlight, which sort of stinks, but given my electric needs, it is way more than adequate to charge my 100 amp hour battery. And here you can see my lights and fan being powered no problem. For a while I was using these plastic shelves that I hate. I finally upgraded to a wooden shelving unit that lines up perfectly to my bench to create an L-shaped workspace. Of course, I ended up polyurethaning it the same color, and I am really happy with the way it turned out. I'll admit it may not hold a ton of stuff, but I care about the aesthetics of this space, and I'm happy with the final look of this setup. Today I introduced to you guys the all-new HeroRR workshop. This is a 10 by 20 foot shed that my father and I built. It is a solar powered shed, and it does have a direct line for electricity as well. I'll show that in a minute. We decided to go with a T111 siding. We have 2 windows in the front, along with these overhead door windows. On the side here, we have a couple more windows, and that wire you see at the top is going from the solar on the roof. Walk around the back real quick. This is our ground wire going right in there. We have a gutter on the back as well. Keep walking around here. This is a aluminum ramp that is pretty light, but it's a little heavy to carry with one hand. But this is what I'll use to get motorcycles in and out of the shed. So I'll pick that up, move it over here. And over here with the double barn style doors, you open it up like this. And as you can see, we have like a lip right here, a step up. That little ramp will allow me to put it in place so then I can get bikes in and out. But as you walk in, you are greeted with the HeroRR workshop. Take a quick look around here. It is still kind of under construction, as you can see with the 2x4s and stuff. One thing I learned with this build is that it's never really done. There's always going to be something I want to do to it on the inside and the outside. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit our power right here. This is a remote that will turn on our inverter over there. I have a really loud fan right there that blows a lot of air, but it's a little hard for video, so I'm going to turn it off. This whole shed interior is done. It's insulated. The roof is done as well. And here's my HeroRR sign. It is flickering on camera, but in real life, there's no flicker. It's just something to do with the neon lights. I have 2 lofts, one on either side, one over here, one over here. Here you can see the 2 windows. They let in a ton of light, even with these shades closed. These shades also, you just pick them right up like this. Currently, I have my 3 kind of outside bikes. Before I had them in that little tin shed and the trailer. I have my track bike, my special Ari Henning bike, the MB5, and then I have my project bike. Now with this whole shed finished, I'll be able to do more work on this bike easier. I could just roll it into the middle here and I have plenty of room. These are the tires I'm going to be putting on this VFR, donated by my 600. All right, we're gonna switch it to the wide angle so it's not as claustrophobic. Right when you walk in to the left, you have this little cleaning station and safety station. I got some safety glasses, some safety work gloves. But over here, this is where the main station is gonna be. This is the workbench. And the great thing about this workbench is it is overlooked by these 2 beautiful windows. And thus, of course, they open up. This will allow a lot of air in when I'm working on things. The whole idea behind it is when I get a project bike, whether it's this or maybe another bike, I can wheel it into the middle of the floor. I can throw it up on the stands. I can then take pieces off and I'll have a cleaning station. This right here, down here, is my ultrasonic cleaner, brand new. Can fit quite a lot of stuff in there. I mean, here's a tape measure for reference. So we can easily put a set of carburetors in there. And it even has a drain tube, which is great. Down there, that's my toaster, which was used for powder coating. I'm not sure how much use that will get And over here is my compressor and a couple other odds and ends. But let's talk about the thing that gets me most excited, and that's the solar. So real quick, there's two ways this shed is being powered. There's the solar system, and then there is a direct line. So anytime I want to plug in something super heavy duty, say a heater, a air conditioner, a compressor, anything like that, it'll go into this wall outlet, and I have an extension cord, and I can run it to my bench. But the other times when I'm running fans, lights, battery chargers, anything that a 2000 watt inverter can handle, then I will use the solar. So real quick, for you guys that don't know much about solar, this is my inverter. It's sticking up through the hole that I made in the bench. The whole idea behind it was that the fans blow up, so it's better to have it for airflow, for the fans to be blowing up. And also, it allows you easy access to these plugs. Right here, we have a monitor for our solar. We are at 100%, so we're not really drawing a lot of watts. But when this system is charging, if it's below 100%, say it's at like 90%, I can pull like 500 watts because I have 1100 watts capability for my two solar panels. I do have this overhead lighting right here. So anyway, down here, I'm going to show you my setup. This is a Redodo 24 volt, 100 amp hour. This is a 24 volt system that I've built here. And the way it works is, and I custom made all of these cables. I custom made all of these lugs. I designed and built this whole system. And I'm going to quickly go over that, and I'm going to go over the costs and maybe some things that I could have done better. But it's mounted to this piece of plywood back here. And we have 1/0 gauge cable going from the battery to this T-class fuse right here. Here we have the main kill switch for the battery. It goes into our positive bus bar, which goes up to our charge controller. And also it goes down to another fuse. This is just a regular blade fuse. And then that goes into my inverter. The inverter negative goes to another bus bar. And right here we have a battery shunt. This is what gives us our battery monitor. So the battery goes to the shunt, to the bus bar, then it connects to the inverter, and it connects to the controller. The controller is grounded to earth along with the inverter. And we also have right here a breaker, and this breaker leads us to our solar panels. Those breaker wires go up this conduit, out here, into another conduit, up into the roof. That's basically the whole setup. Now, the one thing I kind of wished I did differently was I do sort of wish I did a fuse panel, and I wish I did that so I could run a panel box where I could just do switches. Now, there is one way I'm getting around that, and what I'm doing is I'm going to get, and I'm going to return this one because I don't like this one, but I'm going to get something like this, which is a switchable power strip, and I'm going to mount it on the wall right here. So when I come into my shed, I can have everything labeled what they are, lights, fan, whatever, and I could just individually turn anything on that I want rather than unplugging everything individually. Another thing that I wish I did differently was I kind of wish I didn't do this hole in the table. It's really not a big deal because this is a part of the table I wouldn't really be using anyway. It's all the way back in that corner. If I want to be sitting here, I'm going to probably be right in this area. But I just don't think I love the way it looks. And also, it is better for airflow, which is a big reason why I did it. But I don't think it's the biggest deal about airflow, especially with the demand I'm trying to get from this thing and how cool this shed is. Like, this shed does not get that hot. Like, this shed has been built now for a month or so, the inside, and even on the hottest days, if I keep the doors shut and that fan going, this place is actually really tolerable. It never really gets that hot, even on a really humid day. So we did a great job insulating this place and getting it kind of protected from the elements. But anyway, so I think I could have mounted that sideways under here, and I could have just had one little hole where the wire could have came up, and then I could have had my power strip there. and that would have looked a lot cleaner. But anyway, over here we have our shelves with a little backsplash here. Originally, I had those big black plastic shelves and I hated them. They looked awful. They were not as functional as you would think. There was more storage space on them, but they had the holes in the middle, and yes, you could put plywood, but it just looked bad, and I just wasn't a fan of them. They were too tall. I wanted something that wouldn't make it feel cluttered in here, wouldn't make it feel claustrophobic, and I think this setup does a really good job at feeling like a nice open space where I can work, where I can wheel a bike into, and it's just going to be really nice to have this area, this station to work in. Another thing I kind of want to move is my HeroRR sign, my custom neon sign. I'm thinking that it looks good there, and originally the idea was right when you walk into the place, that's the first thing you see. But now I'm sort of kind of thinking that I want to move it over to above the bikes. I just think that that would look really cool to look over here and see the HeroRR sign right above the bikes. And I still have that red cabinet from my trailer. I was thinking about painting it white or black or something like that and mounting that instead right here. That way I have access to all my, like all of these can go inside that cabinet and it'd be much more accessible, and it would just take a lot of that off of there. And then underneath it there, I can take some of those wall mounts, those bicycle mounts, and get these off the floor, mounting them on the wall. I just think that would look a lot cleaner, because originally my idea was to put the red box over there above the bikes. But then I thought about it, and it's not going to be easy or comfortable to walk through the bikes and open the container. Realistically, I'm not going to be doing that too often anyway, but it's just, I don't know, I'm kind of going back and forth what I want to do. So what do you guys think? Should I put the cabinet here and move the logo over the bikes, or leave the logo there and put the cabinet over on that wall, or maybe even that wall? I don't know. I'm super undecided about what I want to do. Oh, I also almost forgot. I do want to get a couple other things too. I want to get a bench vise, and I'm thinking about putting the vise right here. And I also want to get like a bench grinder, and I might put the grinder over here on this end, or a buffing wheel, something like a grinding buffing wheel combo, because I really want to be able to clean parts. I really want to be able to take, for instance, like take this caliper apart and clean everything up, make it look brand new, ultrasonically clean it, rebuild it, put it back together, and have like a fully brand new functioning caliper and put it back in. Like, I want to be able to do things like that, refresh parts. Anyway, guys, what do you think? How do you guys like the new shop? If I do decide to do more upgrade videos in the future, I will put them on my second channel. Most of the stuff is going to be on my second channel, but I just wanted to introduce this on my main channel so you guys could, those of you who are not subscribed to my second channel, can get a good view of it. My second channel just hit over 1,000 subs, so if you want to be part of that group, make sure you subscribe. I'll leave the link in the description below and in the comment section of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, and bye-bye. Hey guys, so this is a quick Google Doc I had going, which is just a breakdown of the costs that I've spent on this shed. And it's not super accurate. As you can see right here, like this $22 charge, I didn't actually label it. But this is basically all the times I went to Home Depot. I would just get the receipt and put the total in here to keep track of how much money I was spending. So trim, nails, drip edge, shingles, all of this stuff just adding up. Studs and screws. I'll just kind of go through this quickly. I tried to add in whenever I refunded anything to try to keep these numbers accurate. Total up until this point was $3,800. And paint and soffit, that increased it. Doing the trim and the stuff for the loft increased it as well. Get the wood for the doors. Paint, caulking, electric and grounding, that cost a whole bunch. The interior walls in T111 was $700. More paint and polyurethane. I must have spent like, just the polyurethane alone, which you don't even think about, probably cost me like $150, maybe even more. 2x4s, interior trim, insulation. I even added in whenever I got refunds on stuff. The carpet was actually like surprisingly so cheap, $155. I thought it was a great deal. Going down, the grand total for the shed was $7,283.26. Now, that is how much it was to build the shed and have the inside and outside finished, but I did have to do more. Of course, the solar system I had you have so much right in here. You can just kind of look at that, like all of these, and this isn't even everything because I had to buy so many other things to go with this, more wires, more whatever. Right here, that's the $1,400, and that's not even including the panels, the panel wires, the panel fuses, all of that stuff. And of course, I spent $450 on the panels. The rail system to mount them to the roof was $265. Plus, I had to pay $100 for that ramp. And then, of course, for the bench itself, I bought a bunch of stuff for that. I bought even more polyurethane for that, which I did not calculate, and even stuff for the shelving I bought. So realistically, when you add in everything, I definitely went over 10 grand, probably between $10,000 to $12,000, somewhere around 11K is probably what I spent on this shed. So anyway, guys, I hope that clears some things up for you. If you want to build a shed like this and you want to do it yourself, this is roughly what kind of cost you could expect.
Let me live my life, the one I'd better lead. All the plans of fantasies, and we looked at them 11 ways. You said, look at me, I looked away, and you wrote the song